it had like just white plain popcorn. It had the yellow kind of cheddar, and then it had like the caramel popcorn. And I always like to eat like 2 or 3 like caramel pieces with like 2 or 3 of the dark orange cheddar ones. Mix them together. They're really good. And then I make my kids eat whatever's left over. And man, it just didn't have that. And I was like, there's just something wrong with this. Anyway, you people out there on the internet, we're talking about important things in the endocrine system today, because when you eat food like popcorn, you need insulin. Yeah, that's right. All right, let's see, on $9.99. Hey, one thing here, we're going to watch a video at the end on Bozeman, hopefully, kind of recap the endocrine system, and then, like I said, you're probably going to have a quiz on the endocrine organs, like locations, like the person you see here. You'll probably have to identify those, and also you'll probably have a matching quiz where you have I give kind of a brief definition or function for each hormone or organ, and then you have to match it up with the thing it goes with. And so I would expect that probably by the end of the week or first of next week. Your test on the endocrine system and organismal development will probably be next week, maybe about Thursday-ish. And then remember, 2 weeks from Friday is our last day of the 9 weeks, and semester. So it's going to come quickly. Really, that last week, probably on Monday we'll do something, but on Tuesday it'll probably just be review, and then whatever your test day is, that'll be about it for that week. So we've got this week and next week to really try to get some things done, and then, like I say, we'll kind of start and kind of do a brief overview of genetics, a review from 9th grade, and then when we'll get in full-fledged to genetics when you guys get back in January. So probably the most complicated, complex topics we'll be discussing all year. I'm sure y'all can handle it though. All right, endocrine system. Important concepts from previous units. Number 1, Tay. Okay, so in the endocrine system, reception would be what? Where does that happen? I need a haircut. You know how, Walker, your wife cuts your hair, but then she's mad at you a lot, and then you have to wait till the time she's not mad at you, you get your haircut? You're afraid what she might actually do. All right. Where does reception take place? Receptor where? On the outside of the cell, yeah. So the receptor protein on the outside of the cell, usually, not always though. Transduction is the signal is transferred through the cell, and then response would be either turning on or off the production of some enzyme or protein, or it could be an enzyme or protein being, well, it could be, let's see, it could be some type of energy molecule or something broken down like glucose. So a number of different things. A process either turned on or off is what we're looking at. And then number 2, ligand. General term for chemical messenger. The chemical messengers in this unit are, we call them? Hormones. Good. Cells can amplify signals using the kinase cascade pathway. So remember, that's kind of that like domino effect where you have, if you just have one signal molecule that hits a cell, that signal molecule can trigger a entire cascade of signals that goes down and throughout that cell, causing like, a million different responses to take place in production of something that may be needed. Okay? All right, hormones. Let's turn back here real quick and look on $9.94 in your books. Yes. So we will start organismal development tomorrow. I know I said today, but I want to get through and make sure you guys have a good kind of basic overview of what the endocrine system is and how it functions. And then we'll get into organismal development. And so that's going to be like a lot of reproduction stuff and how like babies grow into adults. And we'll we'll mostly focus on people because that's the thing you're probably going to be most familiar with and see throughout your life. But we'll also kind of talk about it. It's very similar for most vertebrates. So we'll look at that as we go. Probably one day this week you'll watch The Miracle of Life, which will be like from conception all the way to birth. And so it's a fascinating look at like where life begins and how it develops and all the way till it comes out. Fascinating. All right, something I think you all should be familiar with because I imagine most all of you will have kids at some point in your life. It's important to know where those babies come from, Katie, and what to do if only half your epidural works. All right, hormones. Read that one for us, Matt, in the notes. It's like the first thing under important concepts. It says hormone. Endocrine system. It's under the number 3. It's got the letter I up beside it for 1. Roman numeral 1. Mariah, can you point to that for him?
My brain is left Thanksgiving.
This is why it's important not to do drugs. Some of y'all can't afford to lose any more brain cells than you already have. Did you find it?
Yeah.
You see how it's at the top there?
Yes.
Okay, let's go.
This is a chemical produced in one part of the body and travels to another part of the body to have an effect.
Target tissues, where it travels to, what tissue it's targeting. When we went over the chart that you guys did on different hormones and we filled in, one thing we did was look at the release origin, so where it's released from, and then we looked at the target tissue where it's headed to. So remember, hormones, all that's about is the ability of the body in one place to send a signal to somewhere else is really all that is, okay? 3 parts of the hormonal system: exocrine, endocrine, and neurosecretory. Secretory isn't a secret you keep from someone, Katie. It's just talking about secreting something or like pushing something out. I'm going to go down through here. I'm going to give you a little bit more in detailed version here. Let's see. Well, the first one, let's look at it. Exocrine. Hormone or substance is put into a duct or tube traveling to another part of the body. For example, like your liver produces bile, which goes in a duct to your what? A lot of people get these taken out or have problems with them. Your liver produces bile, which goes to your gallbladder, and then there's a duct from there that goes into your small intestine to emulsify, break down fats. Your pancreas also has a duct, I think, that feeds right into the first part of the top part of the small intestine that helps in food breakdown. Endocrine is really indicating that it's going somewhere in the blood and traveling throughout the body. And neurosecretory is talking about neurons that release hormones, like with the pituitary and hypothalamus. I did find some sheep brains, and so one day this week when we're not too busy, we'll pull one of those out and we'll go through and dissect it, and you can kind of see where some of these different parts of the brain. We're not going to get too detailed because that's not really who we are in here, but I do want you to be familiar with kind of the basic parts. We talked about gray matter and white matter and the pineal gland and the hypothalamus. So the things that we've talked about, we'll go through and look at just so you kind of have an idea where those are located. All right, in your book, Sarah, read A for us on 994.
In endocrine signaling, secreted molecules diffuse into the bloodstream and trigger responses in target cells anywhere in the body.
What's the benefit of this type of signaling? Like, why is this good? Why do we not just have a neuron hooked up to every cell to do this so we can send a faster signal? Why do we use glands for this type of signaling? Do we have neurons hooked up to every cell in our body? No, they're hooked up to different tissues, different sections of our body, different pain receptors in different locations. But it would require an extensive network that would just be super inefficient. So if you're trying to signal a bunch of cells, the easiest way to do it is to just send out these chemical signals and let them flow through the bloodstream, which pumps through your body very, very quickly and can get to almost all parts of your cells in a very, very short fashion. It's kind of the difference between if you had to send someone a message, Walker, and you had to go, like you had to send out a message to everyone in the school, and you had to go around and hand everyone a handwritten message. That would be like if the nervous system were set up with touching every cell. Or you could send out a signal like on, Remind or the website or Facebook or something like that, and you could send it out to a whole group or an email, and it would get there very quickly. And it would require a lot less work and time and effort on your part, and they would just have to open that message. So that's kind of the difference and why it's valuable to have this hormone signaling in your body. All right, part B, Mariah? No, 994.
Endocrine signaling secreted molecules diffuse locally and trigger a response in neighboring cells.
Okay. Para means around. So this is sending out signals to other cells around it. Like we talked about with like mast cells in the histamine inflammatory response. So it's and we talked about infected cells sending out interferon to tell other cells around them that they are, that there's a virus and they're infected and that they need to start producing antiviral compounds. Okay. Part C, Mason.
In endocrine signaling, secreted molecules diffuse locally and trigger response in the cells that secrete them.
I don't know a lot about this one. The book doesn't really go into a lot of detail on this one either. I don't know why you would need to release signal molecules outside the cell only to have them attached to your cell to trigger response. But I guess in some cases that's necessary. Somebody wants to look up extra credit on that, y'all feel free to do that. But it seems like an odd way of going about doing things. Synaptic signaling. We've talked about this quite a bit, where you have a neuron and you have a signal that's transmitted like a neurotransmitter that diffuses across the synapse. So another type of signaling molecule. And then neuroendocrine. This is a little bit different. You can see the neuron there on part E that's attached, or not attached, it's next to the blood vessel, and it secretes signals into the blood vessel to be transmitted throughout and to go to a specific location. But it's coming directly from the neuron. Okay? So those are some different types of signaling, endocrine signaling. All right, let's look. Yeah, Katie?
I googled why autocrine is necessary,
Mm-hmm.
and it said autocrine signals include the extracellular matrix and it simulates cell growth.
Well, I knew that I'd heard about like sometimes these were released and that they would cause cell growth or like cells to divide. What's the purpose of releasing it to the outside of the cell to do that? Why not just have it in an internal mechanism that's causing that?
It just says, I looked at another one that said, why is it important? And it just kind of goes into it needs it for development. And like, if there's something that's attacking you, then you're going to work a little bit faster. I guess is their point of view. But.
I'm going to need more, Katie. All right, quit playing on your phone, Katie, and pay attention. All right, let's see. Local hormones. 5. What are growth factors? In the notes.
These are hormones that cause cell replication. They're used for normal growth and repair.
Okay, so we talked about, so growth factors. So these could be in the case of like if you get cut or scrape or something like that, and you need to activate cell replication in order to get those cells to grow and divide. Nitric oxide. Y'all probably heard of this from the Nitric oxide, you get it at the
Dennis.
dentist office. Now, there's a variety of ways that it's used, though, in the body. If from a neuron, acts as a neurotransmitter to inhibit a process. So it could be inhibiting something like pain you might feel when you're getting that magical root canal. Who knows? If from a white blood cell, it could be a kill cell or a pathogen that it encounters. If from an endothelial cell, a blood vessel, so that means one of the blood vessels lining it, causes surrounding muscles to dilate or relax. Why would blood vessels need to relax? Blood vessels, if they relax, what are they doing?
They're getting bigger,
They're getting what?
like water.
Okay, but would be the purpose of that?
Just regulate blood flow.
Okay, to carry, yeah, it'd be carrying more blood to a region, right? If you had some type of inflammatory response, like a cut or something, and so you needed more blood flow coming in to help fight off infection or meet the needs in that area, yeah. Prostaglandins, hormones help with inflammatory response and muscle contraction. So inflammatory response, remember we talked about inflammation, bringing blood to an area. Cytokines, this is one we have talked about in the last unit, relays messages between white blood cells. Remember, between, the macrophages and like a helper T cell, they release interleukin 1 to trigger them to come to them so that they can show them what pathogen they have. Or helper T cells release interleukin 2 to attract B cells or cytotoxic T cells. So these cytokines are a class of signal molecules that are used for signaling other white blood cells. There's a lot of debate on corona. I don't know if y'all have heard this about, like, a lot of people that die from corona, it's because their body has like an overactive response to the virus, and basically almost kind of like an autoimmune response. Like it's too much. It reminds me of the same kind of thing that happens when people, I don't know if you ever heard of sepsis, where you get an infection, it travels through the blood and goes to other places in the body. But a lot of times your body will like over respond and basically causes like organ shutdown and failure because of this over response to something. It's kind of like if you needed to kill a deer to get some food, Matt, and you went out with a bazooka and blew it up. It would just be a little bit of an overzealous reaction, and for some reason, it happens. And there are two schools of thought that I've been reading about. One is that there's this cytokine storm that causes this major overreaction, which basically means a lot of these. And there's this other class of molecules called bradykines, B-R-A-D-Y kind, and they've talked about a bradykine storm that they may also think it's a little bit different class of molecules that maybe causes that overreaction. So there's still a lot they're trying to figure out on the mechanisms that our bodies are trying to deal with corona or COVID, and then how that's affecting our bodies. All right, hormone reception by cells. Ligand. Tell us about those, Miranda.
Protein hormone. Attaching to the membrane receptor of proteins causes a signal transduction pathway to begin. Can we keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
If the pathway ends in the cytoplasm, turned on or off in enzymes. If the pathway ends in a nucleus, turned on or off transcription.
Oh, turn to 997. That wasn't a reflection of your reading, Miranda. It's just me being tired. I think every day last week I got up before 6:30 because either I was woken or I wanted to go hunting. And then this morning, it's like 6:30 rolled around and I just couldn't get up. Motivation.
What page are we on?
Exactly, Walker. 997. What drives you? What are you passionate about? What tunes your fiddle for you band people? All right, on 996 and 997, this shows you signal transduction triggered by a cell surface protein, signal transduction triggered by a steroid hormone. Read part B on the notes for us there, Tay. Steroid hormones.
Steroid, lipid, fluid to the bilayer portion of the membrane to find a receptor protein and cytoplasm. They do not need secondary messengers. Most are transcription activated.
Okay, so what's the contrast between these two? Hey, let's do this real quick. Let's make a Venn diagram. Y'all know what a Venn diagram is? Okay. Okay, one we've got steroid hormone, and one we've got a protein-based hormone. I mean, they're all ligands. They're all single molecules, so don't confuse it that way. But one is steroid-based, lipid-based. What are things they have in common? And then see if you can give me like one main difference.
The difference seems to be that.
Write it down. I'm gonna say water soluble because that's what maybe that will make sense. So that one's dissolved in water, water soluble hormone. This one is lipid soluble hormone. Let's do it like that. Maybe that'll make it easier. You people at home, I drew a fancy chart there. The board looks a lot dirtier on the iPad. All right, what's one thing they have in common, Mariah? Got one? Walker?
Yeah, they're both ends in a reaction. Or not a reaction, like a response.
They both trigger some type of cellular response. Okay, that's fine. What is specific to the water-soluble hormone? Katie?
It's gonna need secondary messengers inside the cell.
So it's going to have to attach on the cell membrane, and it's going to need some type of secondary messenger to send that signal throughout the cell. Good. And then the lipids-based hormone or lipids-soluble hormone, what does it need, Mason? What does it do? If you look at the bottom of 997, it's pretty... Okay, because it is lipid-based, it can go directly through the phospholipid bilayer, and it's going to go to some type of receptor within the cell and trigger some type of response. Usually, this says most are transcription activators. So this is very important. In my first period, did not know this, or either they were brain dead from eating too much turkey or whatever over Thanksgiving. What does that mean, transcription activator? What is that really activating? Transcription is a part of... It does copy some DNA, not DNA replication though. What? I mean, that's like the last step that's the response. What is transcription? It's the first part of...
Reproduction? No.
You're making what?
Making a copy of DNA.
You're making a copy of a segment of DNA we call a...
mRNA. No.
Well, that's the copy. What's the DNA that they're copying? No, it's DNA. The segment of DNA that codes for something. What do we call that? Gene. So they're copying a gene, which is transcription, and they copy that gene to then make a what? Transcription is followed by translation. What happens in translation? That gene is then translated into a protein. So transcription is the first part of protein synthesis. I know they put this on here, but I can only imagine it's confusing. So basically what happens with a steroid hormone is it comes in and it basically, most of the time, it's causing the activation of transcription factors, which essentially means it's going to cause a protein to be made. And a lot of times a protein that's made is going to become once it folds, it's going to function as a enzyme. Remember, enzymes are usually made of proteins. So really what we're talking about here is some protein or enzyme that is going to be produced. Okay? A lot of times, the signal transduction pathway with the water-soluble hormones, that's going to turn on or off some type of enzymatic process. Or it could be in the case where you have like glycogen breakdown if you need sugar in the blood. Or it could be the case of muscle contraction. Remember our muscle contraction? That was another signal molecule where it was activated. So a lot of those steroid-based hormones are activating transcription factors, meaning they're going to cause some protein or enzyme to be produced. All right, I would say on the AP exam, now on my exam, any of this stuff's fair game. But on the AP exam, and you're studying later in the year, and you're trying to focus on like, what do I need to get out of these units? I would think you're most likely to see something related to a positive or negative feedback loop and understanding how it works. So if you flip over to the next page, let's go through a couple here. Actually, turn over to 1,000. They give you an example of a positive and negative feedback loop. I'm just going to go through a couple random ones we talked about the other day. Remember, negative feedback loops, the purpose of them is to maintain what? Look, I know you are tired. My head hurts too. I think this whole week out for Thanksgiving is probably a bad idea because it's hard to get back in the groove for 3 more weeks. Anyway, we're going to do it. We're Americans. What, Katie? At least most of us, Mason. Homeostasis, very good, or equilibrium. So the purpose of negative feedback loop is to maintain homeostasis. Your body gets too hot, you sweat, it cools it back down. Your body gets too cold, it's chilled, it warms back up. It's to, if something's going one way, it's to bring it back in balance, okay? So your blood sugar gets too low, your body releases glucagon to increase blood sugar. Your blood sugar gets too high, your body releases insulin to take up that blood sugar. So it's all to maintain balance, okay? Positive feedback loops are different because they do what, Matthew? They push stuff in one direction. They enhance a signal. So I imagine all of you, or most all of you, one day will have kids, or if you don't have kids, Walker, you'll be married to someone who does have kids. So when they're that person's having a kid, or one of you ladies, your brain is going to release some oxytocin, and that's going to go to your uterus, and it's going to tell it to do what, Miranda?
Dilate.
You're thinking of the cervix. That does happen too, but your uterus specifically is doing what? Contracting. So your uterus, remember, is a muscle about the size of your fist, and expands and gets wide as the baby grows in there. Your cervix is at the base of the uterus, Miranda. It's that muscle or organ. I don't know if you call it organ. It's at the base of the uterus. That opening where the baby does come out. So that is a part of that. I don't know if that's, gosh, is that a separate hormone? That's a good question. You should look that up. But primarily what's going on is the uterus is starting to contract. That muscle is contracting, just like anytime you contract a muscle, it's getting closer together. And essentially you're trying to squeeze that baby out like a tube of toothpaste, right, Walker? So when your uterus contracts, Walker, what does that release more of? Oxytocin. The more oxytocin you release, the more it contracts. The closer it contracts together, which causes more oxytocin to be released. And it keeps getting farther and farther and farther in that one direction until the baby comes out. So it's moving towards some end.
So it's just like ethylene gas.
Yes, perfect. Another example in plants, ethylene gas. So ethylene gas is the purpose of ripening fruit. Why do plants want their fruit to ripen?
That's like signifying like growth.
It's just telling the world.
Like maturing.
It's telling the world I'm mature, like a fruit, like an apple tree bar mitzvah.
They won't have to provide like proteins and nutrients for that anymore.
Why does the apple want you to know it's ripe? God help me. Why do fruits? What do we do with fruits? We eat them. Why does the plant want us to eat the fruit? Most plants don't want us to eat them, right? They would die. Why do apples and oranges and stuff like that want us to eat them?
When you eat fruits, you leave the seeds behind and you can leave the seeds in place.
Yes, they want you to eat them so that you can poop the seed out somewhere else, Walker, and spread their seeds. Very good. So and in order for you to want to eat that seed, it needs to be something tasty for you, right? So as it develops, it gets to the point where it's ready to be spread, that seed. And so it causes it to ripen, starts releasing ethylene gas. The more ethylene gas it releases, the more ripe it gets. The more ripe it gets, the more ethylene gas. Keeps going, and eventually it's going to rot if it doesn't get there. So, which could spread out and be around the tree and rot and grow. But ideally, it would reach that point where it's sugary and it's sweet, and you take it and eat it, and then move pass that seed on somewhere else. So that's another positive feedback loop. The more ethylene gas, the riper it gets. The riper it gets, the more ethylene gas. You keep an apple in a bag, it's going to get riper much quicker than if it's just sitting out. Yeah, Katie?
Or, like, when we talked about, like, synergist and antagonistic, is that going to be, like, antagonistic going to be negative and synergist be positive? Like, is that going to...
I would say antagonistic is going to be, that's negative, yes, usually always. Synergistic just means that they're working, helping each other out. So that's not necessarily positive. I mean, yeah, it's just two hormones working together for a greater purpose, like lactating and expelling the baby. But yes, when you see that antagonistic hormones like insulin and glucagon, that's definitely going to be some type of a balancing act that your body's going over to maintain homeostasis. Good. All right. Tropic hormones. We're going to get into this more when... Turn back to 999. When we talk about reproduction in the body, where hormones are released in one part of the body and then they're causing a secondary release. We've already talked about a few of these. Let me give you an example. So the anterior pituitary releases thyroid stimulating hormone. What does that target? The thyroid. And then that causes the thyroid to release other hormones like T3 or T4. So that's an example of a tropic hormone. One hormone causing a gland to release another hormone. Okay? Major endocrine glands of the human body. Now you'll notice at the top of the pituitary there, above it, there's this thing called the hypothalamus. Above that is the thalamus. Hypo means like low or below. So the hypothalamus is below the thalamus. Anyway, y'all don't need to know a lot of brain stuff, but that's where it's located. The hypothalamus is essentially controlling a lot of what's going on in the pituitary. The pituitary is controlling a lot of the other glands throughout the body. Okay? Their release and their function. I wouldn't worry about the last part there. The hypothesis, don't worry about it. All right, now, y'all can keep your notes out, and I would keep your book open. We're going to watch a short review video on this, and Mr. Bozeman's going to go through and talk about a lot of these hormones that we've discussed, and hopefully that'll kind of tie everything together. If you can manage to stay awake, Mason. I know y'all been playing on Twitter for the last 4 days.
Hi, it's Mr. Anderson, and welcome to the Endocrine System podcast. If you look way up there at that guy, his name is Robert Wadlow, and that